You just received your 6-inch rocket stove DIY kit. How exciting, right? Let's get in the shop and start welding. Maybe we can take all of these components here and make this, right? So let's go over all the components, make sure you've received everything in the kit. First thing we're gonna check for, make sure you have your coal grate. Make sure you have your two 12-inch by 1-inch square tube and your two pre-bent base legs. So that'll make up your base. For our cooktop here, make sure you have your collar. You're gonna have 4 tabs, the 4 tabs that go on the rocket stove here. And one of those tabs should have a hole in it. You're gonna have your lockdown screw and your 3/8 weld nut. And make sure you have your slotted cross tops. Make sure you have your damper rod. We wanna have our cool touch handle and also our damper door itself. We'll have our fuel door, our cool touch handle, our 5/16 rod, and our weldable hinge. Let's not forget the carry handle. Make sure you have your ash pan tray, your ash pan rod, your cool touch handle for your ash pan rod, and also the back gate of your ash pan. You should have 3 tubes in this. You're gonna have your intake tube. This tube is gonna have a hole drilled out in the front of that tube. You'll have your fuel chamber. Your fuel chamber should have 2 45-degree ears on it. And then we'll have our chimney, or our stack like we call it. If you have all of these parts, you should be ready to assemble your DIY kit. Let's go ahead and get prepared and put this kit together. The first part I like to put together is the base. Obviously you don't have to do it in this order, but I'm gonna show you how we do the base. We do have jigs that we use to make all of our bases, but if you don't have a jig, and obviously you may not have a fab table, all we're trying to accomplish is that we get our uprights, or we get our face plates going straight up and down, and we need to be 12 inches apart. So we're gonna set it up to where we're 12 inches apart. I go 1.5 inches from the bottom to the bottom of my tube, and I go 1/2 inch in. Like I said, we do have jigs, but a guy can set this up anyway. Maybe a good way to lay this out would be measuring and marking. But without the jig, I'm not going to use the jig here today because I want to try to show you guys how I would do it without a jig. And we'll go ahead and start setting this up and getting it square. Inch and a half is where I like to be on my height from the ground. I do have some blocks here that are exactly 1.5 inches, and that's what I use. So if you have anything around a 2x4 or anything of that nature, you could probably set your blocks up to be exactly 1.5 inches up. So we'll go 1.5 inches. And 1 inch in. Let me grab a tape measure. One thing I didn't have. So I'm just gonna measure. I'm gonna make sure I'm 1.5 inches up. So like I said, you can use any type of spacer you have. I'm using these fireball squares, but a 2x4, that's 1.5 inches would work just fine. I get 1/2 inch in. So we're gonna go 1/2 inch. And let's achieve 1/2 inch here. There's 1/2 inch. There's 1/2 inch. Double check everything. There's 1/2. I'm a little bit off there. There's 1/2 inch. So this is critical. You do have to square this thing up a little. So I put a really soft tack on here. I know that I'm 1.5 inches high. I know that I am 1/2 inch from the edge, and I'm gonna put some very soft tacks because I will have to make some adjustments. I'll get my tack in, double check my square that I'm upright here. Let's go ahead and do this side. Again, 1.5 inches. If you bring everything together, sometimes it's better to have an extra clamp or whatever you may need to get it going exactly where you need it. All right. Again, that's one of the reasons I put a very soft tack on here, because I know that I need a little bit of give. And I'll say this again, we do have jigs that we have made for this to make it a lot faster, but I just want to show you how you could do it if you do not have a table or a jig to work from. So if I know this is square off of that, and I'm exactly 12 inches between, get my measurements right, at some point I'm going to hit the bottom of this clamp. There we go. All right. So we are square here. We are square here. Let's get our distance. I know I'm 1.5 inches. Let's go ahead and get our 1/2 inch in. 1/2 inch. Half inch. Double check this side. Move the tad on me. 1/2 inch. I'm acting like Skippy now. I'm having a hard time reading the tape measure. 516, 517, 5. It's 518 lines all the way. 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch. Perfect. We're 1.5 inches off the bottom. I know I'm square. We can double check this. We're square. We are square. Double check this side. We are square. We are square. Everything's good here. Let's go ahead and put our tacks in. Now that the tacks are in, it's pretty simple from here. We're going to go ahead and weld this all out. You can do some double checks. You might have to do a few little tweaks to it. As long as you have it clamped down or held in any position that you have it in your shop, it should be ready to go. And let's go ahead and weld it all out. Okay, the base is welded together. We're going to go ahead and just put the base to the side, and then we're going to grab our intake and get ready to weld that together. The cold grate, the damper rod are what you're going to need at this point right here. I do have some spacers that I've made here. We usually go 1.75 inches on the spacing. So I've just made these spacers here. I say 1.75 inches. They are 1 5/8 inches. So if you can make your own spacing about 1 5/8 inches, that should work for you. I put those spacers in the back, and we're just going to insert the cold grate. The cold grate should go in. It should pretty much finish at the top of this cut opening here. Make sure that you're flush. You don't want to be too far back or too far in. You want as much space as you can for your burn chamber. That right there is perfect. 1 5/8 inches is the spacing on that. It's in. Let's tack it together, and then we'll weld it in. All right. We've got it tacked in there. Let's go ahead and pull out our spacers. What I like to do is I usually try to put, I'll stitch weld the cold grate in. So we can do 3 or 4 stitch welds in here. You can weld it any way you would like. You just want to make sure you have enough weld. Remember, this is one of those parts that takes a lot of heat. So you want to make sure you have some welds in there that can support all of that. I will also put some welds on the back side. The cold grate is in. I've got it all welded in. We're going to go ahead and do our damper and our damper rod. The best way I find to do this is I like to stand it up just like so. Go ahead and put your rod in the holes. the two holes on your damper are going to line up with that rod. And then you just kind of evenly space things out, and you can just hold it there. I like to turn my damper rod all the way to the side. A little tricky sometimes, but it'll get better with your next one, right? Check my spacing, make sure my spacing is even all the way through. Everything looks good. So what you can do at this point is you can put a tack in there. A small tack, that way if you need to break it off, you can break it off. And just make sure that it opens and closes properly. This seems to be working fine. I go ahead and I just fill those holes in, making sure to get my rod on the back. Our damper is welded in. Just make sure that it's working properly. So this seems ready to go. Our base is made, and our intake is made too. Now at this point here, like I said, we do have jigs to set things up, but now's a good time. You can use the stack to go ahead and make your cross top. You can use this to your advantage. I understand everyone doesn't have jigs set up for something like this. So I'll show you a quick way. I like to line up my seams. And all we're gonna do is we're just gonna go around with your tabs and your collar. Remember, the back of your cooktop, there is one tab with a hole in it. You could do that one first if you wanted to. Line everything up. Once you get everything lined up, I usually go 1/4 inch above, putting pressure on the rocket stove base itself, and we'll just tack everything in here. So we're 1/4 inch. I can eyeball this, just make sure it's straight, and we'll give it a quick tack. And we're just gonna work our way around, making sure the back of the stove, and the back of the stove being the part of the stove that has the seam and does not have the cutout, gets the tab with the hole, because that's where we're gonna put our lockdown screw. Just take the rest of your tabs and just work your way around, trying to get the same height. Just try to find the center. You can mark center, obviously. That's probably a smarter way to do it. I can usually find what I'm looking for. Looks pretty straight, and I'll put a tack on it. Make our way around, make sure everything is fitting. Everything is lining up good. Take your final tab. At this point, things should be pretty well secure. Pull it all the way to the side. Find your center, about 1/4 inch up. We'll get a tack on that. All right. So you've got all your tabs for your cross top, for your cooktop in place. Everything seems good. You can just double check it. Obviously, now is also the time to just make sure you're straight and centered. This all looks good. Let's go ahead and just weld our tabs on and get this cross top done. Our tabs are in place. Let's go ahead and put our cross top on. And with everything fitting where it should, get everything straight up and down. Put a small tack. Take your other one. Straight up and down. Put a small tack. Once your cross top is on, you can go ahead and take it off. And now is the perfect time, the opportunity to go ahead and put your thumb screw on. The way I like to put my lockdown screws is I'll take a bolt. I'll take another bolt. Make sure that your weld nut is on the back side, and I'll screw this weld nut onto this other bolt, screw it down tight. That holds everything in place. We'll give it a nice tack, pull the nut off, and then weld it in place. It's gonna be hot, so I just take an extension with a socket and I'll pull this bolt out. Pull the bolt out, go ahead and weld it. You can flip it over, hit the top side. So your lockdown weld nut is now welded in place. Everything else is welded. Now's the time to go ahead and you're gonna just weld all of your corners and weld straight down the middle, giving yourself the cooktop being fully welded and ready to go. All 4 corners are welded. Now I'm gonna put a weld down the middle of the cooktop here. Our cooktop is welded together. We've got our weld nut on. We can now go ahead and put our lockdown screw into the weld nut. Base is done, intake is done, cooktop is done. Let's go ahead and get this fuel chamber prepped and ready to weld the hinge on, and we can start welding this thing, fitting this thing up to weld together. So seam down is the way I like to do it. Make sure your ears are pointing on the side. And we're gonna put our hinge on the top side right here. And the best way to do that is I'm gonna grab my safety glasses. I'm gonna grind the spot right here so that I can get all the mill scale off and I can weld the hinge. I've removed all the mill scale. I've made certain that my the way I've clocked my fuel chamber is correct. I want the ears on the side, not on the top or the bottom. Go ahead and measure out 3 inches. We're gonna just find center of our tube. This is a 6-inch tube. Last time I checked, half of 6 is 3. I'm gonna put a mark at 3 inches. Let's grab our hinge, open up our hinge. I take the brass washer and center it. I bring one end of the weldable hinge towards me and make sure that I overlap the other side of the weldable hinge over the edge. We'll get our welding hood on and we're gonna tack it on here and make sure everything's working. I just dropped the brass washer. Hey, kitty. That's looking good. Let's throw a tack on it. Once you get it tacked, now's the time to just double check. Make sure everything is straight. Make sure you've overlapped. We have overlapped. That's looking good. We're straight. Go ahead and weld the one side of your weldable hinge and get ready. We're gonna put the chambers together. The hinge is on. I do remove the other side. I'll just double check. It is hot. Yep, we're spinning. It's hinging. And you can pull the brass washer off and you can pull the other hinge off. That way it won't fall off and you won't lose it while you're putting everything together. The intake is done. The fuel chamber is done. Let's grab the stack. I'm gonna grab my big square, clamp it down to the table, lay it down, grab your stack, put it into position here. And right away I can tell that I have flared on the end. When you do find it flared like this will be a little loud, but you can knock these flared ends down a little bit. Give it a good whack, turn it over. And the reason it does that is from the cutting process, they will open up just a hair. You just want to make sure that everything is lining up, all even, all flush. Go ahead and grab your intake. Put everything in place. That's looking exactly how we want it to look. That looks good there. Double check everything. Make sure we're fine. You can go ahead and start putting tacks on. Make sure you're still square. We'll put tacks on the ends. Okay, we're tacked here. We'll flip it over, lay it on the other side, and we'll do the exact same thing. Make sure everything is down, push down. If you want to use a clamp, you can use a clamp. Now's the chance you're going to grab your hinge. You're going to put your hinge and your copper washer back on. And we're going to grab our fuel door. I like to just center my fuel door. I bring it all the way flush to the top. I center my offset on each side. Make sure that looks about even. We're going to roll that other hinge down. We want it to just touch it, just like so. My spacing good on both sides. That looks good. My bottom looks even. Go ahead and put a small tack here. Double check. Make sure your fuel door opens and closes. Opens and closes to me. Now you can go ahead and weld your fuel door all the way through. Fuel door is welded on. Everything is looking good there. We're going to grab our fuel door rod. I like to weld it to on the side of my flange. So basically the side of this flange, we usually go up about 3/8 of an inch or so. We'll put it right on the side. Give it a tack. And now is an opportunity to just double check and see how straight you are. Check it from the side, check it all the way around. That looks pretty good. I feel like I could probably tap it. If the tag breaks, it's not a big deal. You can just do it again. I think we're pretty straight there. So the rod is on. At this point, just go ahead and weld your rod to the side. We've got a fuel door that seems to be functioning. We're not going to put the Cool Touch handle on just yet. Actually, at this point is a good time to go ahead and remove your fuel door because we still haven't welded the body yet. We're just trying to get all these components knocked out. Now, our handle. Turn your rocket stove around, measure 3 inches, mark it, remove all the mill scale. Welding the handle on, I will turn my machine up. I normally eyeball this. I find center of my rocket stove, rough eyeball, tack it in place. Get a tack on it. That's why every welding shop needs a hammer. And you can just get her straight. That's actually looking pretty good. I'm gonna tack the bottom. Good. Let's weld our handle on. All right. Handle is welded on. Last component to this whole process. We need to make the ash pan. I'm gonna use my fireball square. All you're looking for is just a nice flat surface, something to push against. You're gonna have your rod, you'll have your Cool Touch handle, you'll have the back plate, and then you'll have the bottom pan. So what I do is I'll push it up against my square, and I'm gonna center between my flanges. I just want the same spacing between my flanges. That looks good there. Make sure, I'll use my hand here and just make sure I'm up against my square. Same spacing between my flanges. Let's tack it. We're looking good. The way I'm gonna weld this, I'm gonna just put a nice stitch in the center and I'll just weld each flange onto the back plate. Just a stitch in the middle and I've welded each flange to the back plate. I'm gonna mark center of my door here. So we're 7 inches. So let's go at 3.5. Gonna mark it at 3.5. We should be 6 here, 3. Yep. All right. So we find our mark. I'm gonna eyeball the initial tack. Now, while that tack is still kind of warm, I can either use my hammer or even my welpers here, and it obviously pulled to the right. I can get that straight. Let's check her up and down. Can obviously needs to go down. And again, don't be afraid to break your tack. At this point, you're just getting it where it needs to be. That looks right on the money. Let's go ahead and weld this on. All right, we've welded on the rod. You can make some adjustments here if you need to. In this case, we don't need to. Let's grab the Cool Touch handle. I slide it on to your rod, and you just bring it flush to the back of your rod. You can weld it all the way around, or you can just put a simple tack to hold everything there. Pretty straightforward. It just holds everything in place. You can weld it all the way around if you want to. One trick about this is definitely keep your heat on the rod. It's going to give you a nice cleaner finish whenever you're done. All right, so what are we missing here? We've got the cooktop made. We've got the base made. We have the ash pan made. The fuel door is done. We haven't put our Cool Touch handles on the fuel door or the damper yet. That we'll do after we get it all welded and cleaned up. Let's clear our table. Here comes the fun part. So we're gonna weld all of our seams here. We're gonna get down into the crevices, top and bottom. We're gonna weld the solid side here and the vertical side here. This project has a lot of welding in it. That's why I think it's a great DIY kit. I'll get it welded together. We'll clean everything up. I'll put the handles where they need to go, a wire brush, and maybe knock off any spatter or something you might have. The last step will be obvious, a pretty obvious step. I think if you've ordered one of my DIY kits, you can probably figure this part out. Once this is welded, all I do is you're gonna place it in the base. I measure 2 inches from the base to the front of the stove. Get yourself 2 inches on both sides, 2 inches. I use my handy dandy level here. And we're just gonna get everything nice and level. And sometimes it's just a simple, just like that. I might add a shim if I needed to. Get it level on each side. Tack your base, and weld that out. Let's go ahead and get this all welded up. I'm gonna clean it up. I'll put the Cool Touch handles on the damper door and the fuel door. And let's see what we end up with. All right, we did it. It's fully welded. Put it on our base, made sure everything was level, tacked it together, welded it up. But guys, this is what it should look like after. We've got the cooktop, we've got our handle, we've welded it all the way around. Our fuel door is cleaned up. We put our Cool Touch handles on our fuel door and also our damper. Wire brushed everything. At this point in the game, our ash pan is sliding into place. At this point, you can do whatever you want. It's your rocket stove. I really hope you enjoyed building it. It should be a fun project. I feel like there's a lot of welding, a lot of opportunity to get some practice in. If you want to paint it, go ahead and paint it. I don't recommend painting it, but you can do whatever you want with it. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We're at Chiasson Smoke. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the bell so that you can get alerts anytime that we post another video. Again, I hope you enjoyed this. It was a fun project for me, and I think it'll be a fun project for you too.